welcome to today's video. I am super excited that you are here with me for my September book of the month. I am going to format this just like I did the last one, where I'm going to read the inside cover, what's on the back, give my own synopsis of the story, and then read the first few pages so that you can get a sense of the writing and the atmosphere of the novel. I am very excited to talk about this book. I very much enjoyed it, and I tore through it in like two days. It did not take me long to finish it. I could not put it down. So without further ado, let's start talking about my September book of the month, House of Salt and Sorrows by Aaron A. Craig. House of Salt and Sorrows. So I'm going to start with the inside cover, which is just a short description of the novel. This novel has some really pretty, details inside. I don't know if you can see it. So the front cover and the back cover has this really pretty, silver, shiny silver nautical print on a black background. Okay. Annalie lives a sheltered life at Highmore, a manor by the sea, with her sisters and their father and stepmother. Once there were 12, but loneliness fills the grand halls now that 4 of the girls' lives have been cut short. Each death was more tragic than the last. The plague, a plummeting fall, a drowning, a slippery plunge, and there are whispers throughout the surrounding villages that the family is cursed by the gods. Disturbed by a series of ghostly visions, Annalie becomes increasingly suspicious that her sisters' deaths were no accidents. The girls have been sneaking out every night to attend glittering balls, dancing until dawn in silk gowns and shimmering slippers. And Annalie isn't sure whether to try and stop them or join their hidden trysts, because who or what are they really dancing with? When Annalie's involvement with a mysterious stranger who has secrets of his own intensifies, it's a race to unravel the darkness that has fallen over her family before it claims her next. House of Salt and Sorrows is a spellbinding novel filled with magic and the rustle of gossamer skirts down long, dark hallways. Okay, Princesses retelling, full of ghosts and gods and a fascinating waterfront world, and I'm reading it from behind my fingers. And then the one quote on the back says, "Once there were 12 of us." So, if you have heard of the fairy tale 12 Dancing Princesses, this is a retelling of that story. If you are like me and you had not heard of the 12 Dancing Princesses, I'm going to go ahead and read a little synopsis of the fairy tale that this book is a retelling of, just so that you can have that in the background of your mind to kind of have an idea of what this is based off of. Not based off of, it's a retelling, so it's totally reimagined. But I'm going to read the fairy tale, a synopsis of the fairy tale that inspired it. So, the 12 Dancing Princesses is a German fairy tale collected by the Brothers Grimm and published in Grimm's Fairy Tales in 1812. In this fairy tale, 12 princesses sleep in 12 beds in the same room. Every night, their doors are securely locked by their father, but in the morning, their dancing shoes are found to be worn through, as if they'd been dancing all night. The king, perplexed, asks his daughters to explain, but they refuse. The king then promises his kingdom and each daughter to any man who can discover the princess's midnight secret within 3 days and 3 nights, but those who fail within the set time limit will be sentenced to death. An old soldier returned from war comes to the king's call after several princes have failed in an attempt. Whilst traveling through the wood, he comes upon an old woman who gives him an enchanted cloak that he can use to observe the king's unaware daughters, and tells him not to eat or drink anything given to him in the evening by any of the princesses, and to pretend to be asleep until they leave. The soldier is well received at the palace, just as the others had been, and indeed in the evening, the Princess Royal, the eldest daughter, comes to his chamber and offers him a cup of wine. The soldier, remembering the old woman's advice, secretly throws it away and begins to snore loudly as if asleep. Asleep, asleep. The 12 princesses, assured that the soldier is asleep, dress themselves in fine dancing gowns and escape from their room by a trapdoor in the floor. The soldier, seeing this, puts on his magic cloak and follows them. He steps on the gown of the youngest princess, whose cry of alarm to her sisters is rebuffed by the eldest. The passageway leads them to 3 groves of trees, the first having leaves of silver, the second of gold, and the third of glittering diamonds. The soldier, wishing for a token, breaks off a twig of each as evidence. They walk on until they come upon a great clear lake. 12 boats with 12 princes appear where the 12 princesses are waiting. Each princess gets into one, and the soldier steps into the same boat with the 12th and youngest princess. The youngest princess complains that the prince is not rowing fast enough, not knowing that the soldier is in the boat. On the other side of the lake, Annalie's older sister, Annalie, and their 6 younger sisters left as the remaining Thomas children. So the book starts off immediately after the death of the 4th oldest child, her 4th oldest daughter, Eulalie, which I think is how you say her name. It's Eulalie, Eulalie. If anyone knows how to pronounce that, let me know, but I've been saying Eulalie. So we start off right after Eulalie has passed, and this poor girl has fallen off a cliff. So that's quite the cliffhanger to start a book with. I'll try not to do that again. That was embarrassing. Anyway, we start right after Eulalie has passed away, and we are getting all of this from Annalie's perspective, what she thinks about losing a 4th sister. Also, their mom has passed away. The mom passed away before any of the eldest 4 daughters did. So we've got dad, stepmom, and eight girls left. And the entire town is kind of whispering, and you can tell that at this point they're kind of starting to believe that the Thomas family is genuinely cursed. You can tell Annalie overhears whispers, and just the way that the girls are interacted with, you can tell that the townspeople believe that they're cursed. One of the things that I really liked about this book was the world building. So it's a totally fictional world. I want to say that the continent is like Arcania or something like that, but I could be wrong. I probably should have taken notes and written all of that down. But anyway, the book is called House of Salt and Sorrows because the Thomas family lives on these string of islands known as the Salton Islands, and I think that the island that they live on is called like Selkirk, maybe, and their dad is a duke, so they live in this very nice like 4-story house on one of these islands, and their dad like oversees a bunch of shipyards and stuff for the king. So wealthy family live on these islands, and one of the things that I thought was a very like interesting part of the world building was they have their own like theology or mythology, whatever you want to call it, like system of beliefs around these different gods. So they have like Vibony, who's like the goddess of the sun or god of the sun, and then Vasria or Varsia, one of those two, Vasria or Varsia, who's like the goddess of stars and night. And then the main one that you hear Annalie talk about is Pontus, who is the god of the sea. And their like theology and gods and like their myths and legends and lore is very, very, very important to like their culture and who they are as a people. So the author has come up with these really interesting like that this is another kind of morose, macabre, maritime novel, which is very similar to my August book of the month, and I promise that I do read other things, and I didn't realize how similar these were. We've got a curse, a young female protagonist, lives by the sea, lore, legends. So I'm realizing now that this is super similar. A super similar novel to my August book of the month. But actually, those things aside, they're not at all similar. Like, not similar at all, aside from the being by the sea, young female protagonist, and a curse. Other than that, no connection. Anyway, see, I'm already rambling. So, this book was more of a thriller than I expected it to be. I don't know why I was surprised, considering we started our novel with 4 dead sisters and a perceived curse on this family. But there were lots of twists, lots of turns, which is why I read it so quickly, because I wanted to know if what I thought was happening was really happening. And it kept my interest. So we've got Annalie following the death of her 4th oldest sister, Eulalie, and gosh, I'm trying to think about how to talk about this without giving away any spoilers. I mean, just knowing that it's a retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses is probably enough for me to be able to say that the remaining 8 sisters all get these new shoes that they call fairy shoes for a ball. And they find out about this passageway that is supposedly used by the gods, specifically Pontus, so that he can travel anywhere in their world really quickly. And they start using this passageway to go to balls, and they are wearing their shoes out. And Annalie starts to get suspicious about these balls. Like, while they're there, things start to feel off to her, and she's picking up on things that feel a little eerie and wrong. So she stops going, and her sisters keep going, and Annalie is trying to figure out if there really is a curse on her family, and if there is, what is it, and how can she stop it, because she's starting to get really paranoid, you know, having lost her mom and 4 sisters, and she's starting to pick up on these eerie vibes. And the book is basically her trying to figure out what's going on before she gets picked off next. There obviously is a suave male protagonist that she actually meets on a pier. And, you know, same kind of thing as the last one. There are sparks, swooning, instant attraction, and this guy is around as the book moves forward, and helps Annalie synopsis done. Now I am going to read you guys the first 5 pages so that you can get a sense of the writing style and atmosphere. Okay. There's just some more really cool illustrations. This little octopus is a part of the Thomas family crest, and the little illustration is on the first page of every new chapter. I really love and appreciate little details like that in books. I just think they're really fun, and they kind of give it like a special something, you know? House of Salt and Sorrows. Sorry that my desk creaks when I lean on it. I don't know that I said this in the last video, I find the like crinkle sound that library books make, since they have that like special plastic cover, very satisfying. Is that just me? Okay. Chapter 1. Candlelight reflected off the silver anchor etched onto my sister's necklace. It was an ugly piece of jewelry, and something Eulalie would never have picked out for herself. She loved simple strands of gold, extravagant collars of diamonds, not that. Papa must have selected it for her. I fumbled at my own necklace of black pearls, wanting to offer her something more stylish, but the battalion of pallbearers shut the coffin lid before I could undo the clasp. We, the people of the salt, commit this body back to the sea, the high mariner intoned as the wooden box slid deep into the waiting crypt. I tried not to notice the smattering of lichens growing inside the gaping mouth drawn wide to swallow her whole. Tried not to think of my sister, who was alive and warm and breathing just days before, being laid to rest. Tried not to imagine the thin bottom of the coffin growing fat with condensation and salt water before splitting asunder and spilling Eulalie's body into the watery depths beneath our family mausoleum. I tried instead to cry. I knew it would be expected of me, just as I knew the tears were unlikely to come. They would later on, probably this evening when I passed her bedroom and saw the black shrouds covering her wall of mirrors. Eulalie had had so many mirrors. Eulalie. She'd been the prettiest of all my sisters. Her rosy lips were forever turned in a smile. She loved a good joke, her bright green eyes always ready for a quick wink. Scores of suitors vied for her attention even before she became the eldest Thomas daughter, the one set to inherit all of Papa's fortune. We are born of the salt, we live by the salt, and to the salt we return, the high mariner continued. To the salt, the mourners repeated. As Papa stepped forward to place 2 gold pieces at the foot of the crypt, payment to Pontus for easing my sister back into the brine, I dared to sweep my eyes around the mausoleum. It was overflowing with guests, bedecked in their finest black wools and grapes, many of them once would-be beaux of Eulalie. She would have been pleased to see so many broken-hearted young men openly lamenting her. "Annalie," Camille whispered, nudging me. "To the salt," I murmured. I pressed a handkerchief to my eyes, feigning tears. Papa's hills flanking the stony opening, the service was over. Papa turned to the gathered mass, a wide shock of white streaked through his dark hair. Was it there yesterday? Thank you for coming to remember my daughter Eulalie. His voice, usually so big and bold, accustomed to addressing lords at court, creaked with uncertainty. My family and I invite you to join us now at Highmore for a celebration of her life. There will be food and drink, and he cleared his throat, sounding more like a stammering clerk than the 19th Duke of the Salin Islands. I know how much it would mean to have Eulalie. I know how much it would have meant to Eulalie to have you there. He nodded once, speech over his face a blank facade. I longed to reach out to ease his grief, but Morella, my stepmother, was already at his side, her hand knotted around his. They'd been married just months before and should have still been in the heady, blissful days of their joined life. This was Morella's first trip to the Thomas Mausoleum. Did she feel uneasy under the watchful scrutiny of my mother's memorial statue? The sculptor used Mama's bridal portrait as reference, transmitting youthful radiance into the cool gray marble. Though her body returned to the sea many years ago, I still visited our shrine nearly every week, telling her about my days and pretending she listened. Mama's statue towered over everything else in the mausoleum, including my sister's shrines. Ava was bordered in roses, her favorite flower. They grew fat and pink in the summer months, like the plague pustules that claimed her life at only 18. Octavia followed a year later. Her body was discovered at the bottom of a tall library ladder, her limbs tangled in a heap of unnatural angles. An open book adorned her resting place, along with a quote etched in Vipinian, which I'd never learned to read. With so much tragedy compressed into our family, it seemed inevitable when Elizabeth died. She was found floating in the bathtub like a piece of driftwood at sea, waterlogged and bleached of all color. Rumors ran from Highmore to the villages on neighboring islands, whispered by scullery maids to stable boys, passed from fishmongers to their wives, who spread them as warnings to impish children. Some said it was suicide. Even more believed we were cursed. Elizabeth's statue was a bird. It was meant to be a dove, but its proportions were all wrong, and it looked more like a seagull. A fitting tribute for Elizabeth, who always so badly wanted to soar away. What would Eulalie's be? Once there were 12 of us, the Thomas dozen. Now we stood in a small line, my 7 sisters and I couldn't help but wonder if there was a ring of truth to the grim speculations. Had we somehow angered the gods? Had a darkness branded itself on our family, taking us out one by one? Or was it simply a series of terrible and unlucky coincidences? After the service, the crowd broke up and began milling around us. As they whispered their strained condolences, I noticed the guests were careful not to get too close. Was it indifference to our station, or were they worried something might rub off? I wanted to chalk it up to lowbrow superstition, but as a distant aunt approached me, a thin smile on her lips, the same question flickered in her eyes just below the surface, impossible to miss. Which one of us would be next? your screen for one video, and I will see you in my next video. I am actually currently reading We Hunt the Flame, but I'm reading it on my Kindle. I don't know if you guys would ever be interested in me talking about a book that's not an actual book, because then I can't make book sounds with it. I can just kind of tap on my Kindle, you know. So let me know if you are still open to those kinds of book videos, if it's Kindle, not hard copy. I hope that you are having a great day, and I hope that you are relaxed and unwinding and getting ready for some quality rest. I will see you